Hey everyone.
Hi.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Mhm.
Good to go.
Okay, I'm in my car stuck in traffic, can't get home.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it happens. We just got done with like an after not an after school, but like a special day activity. It was out in the sun. I'm beat. I'm tired. I have no energy.
Okay.
I hear
I'm
you.
having some type of allergic reaction.
Nice.
So
Well,
yeah, that's fun.
we all got it going on.
Well, maybe we can make this quick as possible. Get
Yeah,
an hour in and be on
that's
the
the
way.
plan. That's the plan.
I think
Yep.
they're doing some construction because, like, all this week, the traffic is just getting worse and worse. It's not getting better.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's between Peachtree City and Noonan.
Huh, interesting.
Gotta start riding your bike.
I would never get so far.
Let's
All
see.
right, I'm sorry, guys, but I'm
That's
ready.
all right. Let's bring it on. Let's do the chapter first. I actually just got done reading the chapter just the other day. And as for the book, though, I read the book over spring break last week during the eclipse. Our plane got delayed on the way home. We went to go watch the eclipse, and the plane got delayed, so I read it last week. And then just today, I spilled coffee on it. So,
Oh,
oops.
Where did y'all go see the eclipse at?
This is Dallas. We went out to Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. It was really cool. It was my second one. So,
We went to Illinois and
mm,
it took us 10 and a half hours to get home when it was supposed to take us 6. So we got home at 1:30
why?
in the morning
Traffic
because of
or
traffic. Mhm.
and then Todd, there was a total eclipse in Texas, correct?
yeah, we went to go see the totality
Yeah,
of it.
Illinois was total also.
Nice.
Really? Okay, so that was
Mhm.
pretty cool,
It was really
interesting to
neat.
see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
good stuff. Alrighty. Well, I
Oh, hold
picked.
on.
Oh,
Hold on. I had my
Okay.
book. I set it down somewhere between. Hold on.
hmm.
Might be in the kitchen. I think I had it, and then I started. Not here. I have my textbook, but not the book. I'll be right back.
Yeah, that's all right. I got mine on Kindle, and they said that my rental ran out just last night. I was in the middle of reading it, and they're like, "Your rental's out. Sorry."
Oh wow.
So I had to refresh it.
Okay.
All right.
I just left it as I was
Nice.
walking through the house. Just put it down and walked away.
Nice. Yeah, so I picked this when I was kind of looking at, I don't know if I picked it or if I got lucky rather, but when we were looking at the subjects and figuring out who's gonna do what, I'm glad I wound up getting this one because this is my wheelhouse, the exceptional child,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And so it was really nice to read about. And it definitely had a bunch of good like recommendations in the chapter. And it seems to me like the overarching theme in our textbook right now is like for any group of people that is considered like diverse or what have you, it's best to get in with children's literature first that exemplifies like, you know, the regularness of diversity so that it like becomes normalized. Because there was a quote right there at close to the end of this chapter where, you know, kids pick up on stereotypes like this and they don't mean to, they're blank slates. And so combating that right off the bat is, you know, is good for development, you know, getting kids normalizing like diversity and this and that, and making sure that they have good exposure to this so that by the time they wind up growing up and seeing, you know, somebody with a disability or meeting somebody, you know, it's not just like, you know, because for me, which is ironic because as a sped teacher, you know, this is my daily life. But back when I was a kid, like it was just like the sped classroom was like, oh, those are the kids over there, and you just happen to see them in the hallway because they're on a water break or something, you know. And
I was thinking like when I don't remember ever interacting with any of, I mean, the kids who had learning disabilities who would get pulled out for like math or, you know, reading, but like severe and profound classes, autism classes, like we never did any inclusion or, you know, like I don't even know if we had any of those classes at our school, you know?
yeah,
Whereas when I was in
everything was kind of separated, whereas now it's not. And I don't know but about you guys, but when I was a kid, like we didn't really know much about special education or children who were in special education. You just kind of looked at them different when you did see them or you came in contact with them, which wasn't very often. But as far as interacting with them in school, you didn't.
yeah,
because it's so interesting because I mean I'm a special education para, and I spend part of my days in like co-taught classes, but then I also spend part of my days in like units, you know, where like it's self-contained. But I mean, even then, those kids are, you know, do specials with gen ed, or like we just had an arts and education day and I took two of the kids to the different arts and education, you know, activities. And like today was a field trip with kindergarten and three of our kids went with kindergarten on the field trip. And with middle school, like we had what we called lunch bunch, where one day a week, gen ed kids, anyone who wanted to, could come eat lunch with our kids, and there would be games, you know, stuff like that. And that just didn't happen and we also had like a social skills class where gen ed kids would come in and play like Uno with the kids in the autism unit to practice like social skills and stuff. And that didn't happen. Because if it did, I would have been volunteering for it. Like if it was available, I would have done it. And those just did not exist.
Even the class that I currently teach, in my classroom, I teach 2 grade levels, 4th and 5th grade ELA, TAG, and SEC. So it's just interesting because in both of my classes, for my 5th grade, I have someone who pushes in and we co-teach. For my 4th grade, they push in for about 30 minutes and then they pull out for small group. But just to watch my children, like the TAG children interact with the SEC children, they don't treat them differently. Like they treat everybody the same. And I think that's pretty cool that they don't look at them as being different.
For sure. That ties into what the author was saying about like, you know, when you expose them early, then it's a normal part of life. And I remember just from my own anecdotes is when I was, you know, going to school, I think we had one of the first models of like an inclusion class where it was really just the specials or the connections. And, you know, literally my thought was like, who's this kid, you know, like, and why is he making funny sounds, you know, because that was otherwise the kids were locked up in another room somewhere else doing, you know, special ed stuff in their classroom. and you would just kind of see them out in the hallway, and then you hang out with Steven and he makes sounds or something in art class. And now it's definitely a lot more inclusive. But the book also brought up the issue of, then you've got a gen ed teacher with special ed kids in your classroom, and they've never expected to teach special ed, or they don't have the certifications. And I don't know what that looks like as that kind of teacher, but my mom, who was the English teacher, she did mention, like, you've got kids that come in for inclusion classes, and she doesn't know what to do with them. So she relies on the sped push-in teacher that comes in to help. Except more often than not, she said that they were honestly kind of useless. They'd sit and drink coffee and sit on their phone, and yeah.
That's sad.
And which is, yeah, because like she taught at like the
Yeah.
premier high school in Warner Robins. Like,
Yeah.
it's supposed to have, those levels of employees, but so it's a double-edged sword.
And that's a disservice to the students.
Yeah.
In my case, I certified in special ed. But it just takes a lot of between both teachers to actually make it happen day to day. And it shouldn't be the case where the special ed teacher is coming in, just like having a coffee break and scrolling on her phone, because the students, they really need that support, and they heavily rely on having that support.
Yeah.
I read something that said, it was actually a comment on an Instagram, but I thought that's so true. It said inclusion without support is abandonment. So like if a kid doesn't have the right supports or the right accommodations, or a teacher is not doing their job when they are pushing in or whatever, then nobody's getting what they need, because the special ed kids aren't getting what they need, and then the gen ed teacher is trying to juggle too many things.
Yeah.
But also, like, I feel like as a special ed parent, I mean, of course I have kids that I'm supposed to work with, but I work with all the kids. In some classes, the kids know who I'm working with. Like one class, they're like, "Oh, you work with so-and-so because you weren't in here until he came to our class." Which obviously, but I'm always like, well, I mean, I'm here for all of you, like if you need me, I'm here to help you too. I'm not just here to help certain kids. I'm here to help everybody. But I was just thinking, like, one of the books said children can experience a tremendous growth experiences when learning about kids who have other, and not just cognitive disabilities, but it can be other disabilities like illness or, epilepsy or something like that. But I feel like it really has to be guided carefully and correctly. Last year, I spent a lot of time in a severe and profoundly disabled class. And one of the things that when we first went into a classroom before we started going to specials with them, we went in one day and just let the kids ask questions, because the kids we were bringing to that class, they were in wheelchairs, they had trachs, and the kids had questions like, well, how does he eat? How does he go to the bathroom? So we were just very, he has a feeding tube and the trach is to help him breathe, and he cannot speak and he can't walk, so he wears a diaper, but everybody has different needs. But the kids were really curious, but to give them a chance to ask and get their questions answered instead of them just sitting there staring at him, trying to figure it out. And like we have a little boy at our school who had a stroke when he had cancer when he was 2 months old, and then he ended up having a stroke. And because of it, he has loss of vision in an eye, in both of his eyes, and loss of hearing in an ear. And, he wears braces and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents like come and read a book every year at the beginning of the year, and then they let the kids ask questions, and then they let him ask questions. And he's very like, he's in second grade, and he'll say, well, I got really sick when I was little and part of my brain wasn't working right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the doctors had to do things to make it work, and that's, the kids are like, oh, okay, cool,
Yeah.
But instead of the kids just sitting there staring or being afraid, letting them ask the questions, I think in a safe, like, environment and for him, like, his vision teacher comes in and his DHH teacher comes in. So people can answer questions.
Yeah.
I like it. Providing those opportunities because, they really just don't know. And they do wonder, and to be able to ask and feel comfortable asking and getting a response, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we had a moment here where I forget why they were here, but it was another school came in and they wanted to ask, our students questions like, what's it like to be blind, this, that, and the other. And, they showed off their cane and they were like, this is how I get around, and showed what Braille looks like. I've got some Braille in here with some coffee stains from this morning. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but it's cool.
Oh yeah.
And they showed off. I actually wanted to show off, even for you guys, some assistive technology. Their Braille writer. I'll be right back.
Oh yeah, I was wondering if you all had a Braille writer.
Yeah, we do.
I did with my Cub Scouts one year. I didn't have a Braille writer, so I made their names in Braille with puff paint.
Nice. Actually, there was a, speaking of Braille, there was a I'll let you guys watch it. Well, you can't see it, but there was an artist at down in Texas that incorporated Braille into his painting, and we were at this festival just walking around looking under the tents, and I was looking and I was like talking to my friend, I was like, I think that's Braille, but the spacing is all off and I can't make it out. And it turns out the artist was right behind me. It was like, I've never had anybody call me out like that before. It was pretty awesome.
Yes, I'm sure the spacing was all off on their names in Cub Scouts, but at least it gave them an idea of like what it looked like.
So here is I can't tell if you can see it, but so it's 6 keys, so you've got 1, 2, 3. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, space bar. These are advance the line, that's backspace. And I'll try to do it backwards. I'll write my name. And it's very confusing doing it backwards. No, it came out all wrong, but it's okay. It came out backwards. But that's my name up there.
Cool.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. It's a neat device. Digital versions where they can it's called a refresher Braille. It's kind of a cool. And so they can plug in like a flash drive or something and read, like I can type up a Word file and then the kids get they plug in the flash drive and it refreshes line by line, and then they can email me their work, and then it fits in their pocket. It's a lot better than that thing.
Yeah, Braille books are so huge. I one time saw it was like a little girl got Braille Harry Potter. It's like multiple volumes.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot. A lot of technology. So that position that you were mentioning, the vision teacher, that's what I'm doing next year. I get a new job up in Atlanta, and I'll be the guy coming in and pushing in and serving the blind kids.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's what I got
Are you
going
just
on.
doing blind, or are you also doing like visually impaired?
Yeah, TVI, teacher of the
Okay.
visually impaired.
Okay.
That's all I have going on. And it kind of like I really identified with that quote at the beginning where they were saying like the general ed teacher doesn't have the certificate to work with these
Yeah.
kids. And if they do wind up getting, like you said, abandoned in the classroom, then they're kind of at a loss. Because
Yeah.
I accidentally stumbled into special ed. Like I drove past the school and they had a help wanted sign and I was like, I need a job. So I applied and I wound up loving it, but it's not something I felt prepared for even like 3
Mhm.
years. Like they gave me keys to a
Yeah.
classroom and I didn't feel prepared. I had imposter syndrome for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's definitely different.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just trying to make sure everybody gets what they need.
Mhm.
It's challenging in a general ed classroom, but in special ed, it comes with multiple
Yeah.
challenges.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then even then, like all the laws attached to it,
Mhm.
you got lawyers waiting in the background. You never
Oh,
see
yeah.
them, but
Yeah.
They're there.
You
waiting
see
on
them
you to slip
when
up.
you
Yeah.
mess up. Yeah, when you mess
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things I thought was interesting, was when they were talking about lived realities of students with disabilities, but then also their families too. And like I really liked how they focused on both things because especially like for my kids in the autism unit, um like for them there's also the like one of them was in the play and her parents could never come together because her brother couldn't come, and like just and my dad's cousin was well, he would have been profoundly intellectually disabled. That is not what they called it then. But it affected the whole family, right? So like his sisters were fiercely protective of him and loved him so much, but it also changed the way they got to live their lives because they didn't get to travel because he needed all this extra care and it's a whole family thing. And a lot of times the siblings, even though they love their siblings so much, they can also be angry and resentful of things.
The book mentioned that too.
Yeah. Like they can't get a break or they can't be like the center of attention. And I really liked some of the books that talked about like from the siblings perspective, because, if you don't teach in a severe and profoundly disabled class, you probably aren't going to be the one teaching those students, but you may teach a sibling of a student. Or if you're not in an autism unit, but you may have a student who has a sibling who's severely autistic and needs to vent, needs to see this the sibling side of things,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And we see that too, unfortunately, a lot of times with parents, even they drop their kids off of a facility and come back a week later. And I don't know, a lot of my kids, like if they can't read, they're totally blind. There's not a lot of stimulation going on, but they're still conscious up here. They're not severe and profound. They can't read and they're totally blind.
Right.
So there's not a lot for them to do. So when we talk about our weekends, they'll be like, I sat in my room, played iPad, listen to my iPad all week. I'm like, damn, all weekend? Really?
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're the home for DHH for our area. And that is the reality for a lot of our DHH kids.
What is DHH?
Deaf and hard of hearing.
Yeah.
So we actually have two kids who are one of them was completely deaf. He's moved now, but the other one, she's very hard of hearing, and neither one of their parents know any sign language.
Really?
I have a student who is, I don't think he's completely deaf because he's definitely hearing impaired. He has cochlear implants.
Yeah, and then you have the microphone.
And I have to wear the microphone so that he can hear me.
Yeah.
But he does well in class.
So one of our students, he was completely deaf and only spoke with sign language. But when he came to our school, he didn't know any sign language. So he was in first grade and he had no way to communicate with anybody.
And that has to be difficult.
Yeah. And, you know, he had behavior issues. Well, guess what?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course he had behavior issues. He can't communicate with anybody. And then even then, like, the only place he could communicate with people once he started learning sign language was at school. Because his parents didn't take the time to learn sign language. Even, you know, like they knew like bathroom, you know, like eat, like less than I know, you know, and I just have kids in my class and most of our kids have cochlear implants with, you know, microphones and things like that. But then, you know, we do have a handful that actually have interpreters and but yeah, it's really sad because we have two whose parents know almost no sign language, even though their kids communicate.
You know, it's the same here. Parents don't know Braille, you know. Yeah.
So the kids go home and they don't communicate with anybody because nobody can talk to them.
In fact, we just totally random, but we had a student, he's 27 now, and he came back to visit because we had this special event today, and I saw him walking in through the door, and I never taught him, so I didn't say hey to him, but I overheard him talking to the principal. He's like, "There's so much less Braille out there." Like, yeah. He's like, "It's nice to come back. Everything's in Braille again."
Yeah. I just, as a parent, like, I cannot imagine if my child couldn't hear that I wouldn't spend, you know, but I wouldn't learn how to communicate with them.
Yeah. And I mean, like, whatever it takes to be able to communicate with the child and just to ensure that they have what we would, as much as a normal life as they could. But I mean, sometimes the parents, they never cease to amaze.
Our parent mentor actually has a deaf child, and she learned sign language and this and that, so she's got that going on. She's got like a poster in her house. She showed me. It's pretty cool, all the different signs. But like you said, there's a lot of parents out here that just like, oh, I got a blind baby, guess I won't learn Braille. Does that make sense?
That's not important.
Right. I liked the book even like made the point that like some of our kids may not have kids with disabilities in their class, may never experience someone who is deaf or blind or when they're children, but eventually they will somewhere down the line. Maybe they end up having a child who has a disability, or they end up having a parent who loses abilities as they get older. And like exposing to children young through books and literature like helps kids be less anxious and more prepared when they do meet or need to support someone with a disability, you know.
And it may not even be even if you never come in contact with someone in school, your family, you know,
maybe someone in your neighborhood, or
it can be your neighbor. You can be at the store. You can be out at a public place. You can be anywhere.
When I was in Washington, D.C., I asked the security guard in the metro station, I was like, how do I find such and such? And before he could answer, this lady with a cane, you know, a blind lady with a cane comes walking up. She's like, I got you. I'm like, I was working at the school at the time. I was like, oh, the tables have turned. You're leading me around now. Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, when I was little, like I said, we didn't learn about that at school, or we didn't like really see kids. And I don't know where they were, because in our elementary school, I don't think we even had a class. So I don't know if they were at another elementary school or, but when I was little, it was Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers that introduced it. Like Sesame Street always, they would have kids on who were in wheelchairs, or, kids who were blind, and they would talk about it, and that was like my introduction to it. I mean, other than my dad's cousin, like, I mean, I always knew him. He was, and I didn't think anything of that. Like, I just sat next to him with his wheelchair and sang songs to him, and he was in his 20s, and, but again, I had known him my whole life, so I didn't think anything of that.
Yeah.
He was just Bubba,
I think now, there's a lot of inclusion even on television, because they show children who have disabilities. So even if you don't personally know someone with a disability, there is some exposure to it, through the television, a commercial. They'll frequently have those, and circulars that come out, they'll have those. So there is more exposure to it now than it was.
It
when
is,
I was younger.
for sure. A final point that I had on the chapter was they mentioned that they touched on the inclusion classroom, but then they also talked about the benefits of, like, when they're amongst their peers, other blind or disabled children. And a perfect example is in our incoming meetings for they're not IEPs, but when the kids like getting ready to be accepted at our school, we'll have a meeting, and the kid's always quiet, sitting in the corner, doesn't want to talk. They talk about how quiet they are at home and blah, blah, blah. They show up here, and it's a whole new person. We just got this girl, Cassidy, and she just showed up, and she was quiet as a mouse in the meeting, and her parents were warning us how shy she is. You can't get her to be quiet. Yeah, she's got like a boyfriend now.
Yeah.
Like, whatever happened to this quiet little girl that I was promised. Yeah, but it happens all the time. Like, we get new kids all the time, and they show up, and within a week they're like, they found a group of friends and all hanging out. And in my classroom, it's the middle ground. So like across the hall, it's like what we call vanilla blind back in the day, where you're just blind, right? And so, but in my classroom, you're blind and you got autism and you got cerebral palsy and you got something else going on. So I got kids that are like using walkers, using wheelchairs, whatever, and they have no problem mixing in with like even the popular kids are like, what's up, Jaden, hanging out, whatever. Yeah. So that's pretty cool to see, Yeah.
Yeah, and my student who we would take to music with fourth grade, the kids just loved him, and he ended up getting really sick and was in the hospital. And one of the kids came to me and said, if we make cards for him, will you get them to him? And I was like, absolutely, So they made a big, class card, and it was not the teacher's idea. It was not, it was the students, because they were like, we miss seeing him every day,
That's sweet.
So.
Yeah. How sweet. Well, anything else on the chapter you guys stuck out? Any notes? Nice. Well, then moving right along to the book that still has wet coffee in it. Y'all, I said my first 4-letter word in class today when I did that too, because I spilled my coffee, and it wasn't just the book, it was my desk. It was like seeping up into my laptop vents. My telephone over here. It was bad. Yeah. And I didn't even get to drink any of it either. It was, so
No,
I've been dragging.
that's the worst part is when you don't get to
Worst
drink the
part.
coffee.
Yeah, 10 years in the classroom, and I've censored myself pretty well, except for today. But the kids found it funny. I teach high school, so they're like, "Yeah, it's cool."
They probably thought it was hilarious. Yeah.
That's part of their vocabulary.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And then with them being blind, they don't know that I'm sitting there like 2 feet away listening to them, and they're cussing up a storm. Like, hey, you shouldn't do that. Yeah. So do you guys know where the title of this book came from? The quote? By chance? Fishing a Tree? Yeah. Albert Einstein. Yeah, I picked up on that right as soon as I saw it. I was like, this must be the that. Yeah.
And I like Allie. It's interesting because she doesn't like the quote "fish in a tree." You know, Mr. Daniels talks about it, but along the book, she throws in things like that, like a fish climbing a tree, a turtle making a sandwich, a snake playing the violin. Like even before he tells her the quote, she says some things that are like that kind of idea, right?
Yeah. And I picked up on that. That was the first thing I picked up on, like as far as like the writer's style. Like, okay, I'm gonna see a lot of metaphors, a lot of similes like this.
Yeah.
And they were all good. They're all nice.
This is a really great book. This is probably my favorite of all, and it took me a while to actually start reading it. Just because I was like, I'll wait. But you know, once you start reading it, it's a really great read.
It was fast. I didn't want to read it too early because I don't want to forget anything. But
yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Allie definitely overcame a lot of challenges that she was faced with, and even the way that she described herself in the classroom, it kind of made me, I don't know, I kind of felt sorry for her because it's like, wow, you know, this is what these children really experience. These are their feelings. And that could be difficult for a child. And Allie was an older child. So imagine a student who, an elementary age, you know, the challenges that they face, not being able to read. Not even because she doesn't want to learn, it was difficult for her. And also, well, maybe not you, Todd, but oftentimes in elementary, we see students who struggle with reading, and we're like, well, why can't they read? And what's going on? And you're incorporating all of these interventions, and nothing is working. And sometimes dyslexia is overlooked.
Yeah.
It takes a long, long time for someone to say, well, maybe we need to do something different and look at different things. There's a reason why this fourth grader isn't reading, or fifth grade, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I found it so interesting. Like, I thought, how did she get to sixth grade before someone, but then like her dad's in the army and they probably moved a lot.
7 schools in 7 years.
So maybe she was never anywhere long enough, like, because I know, like, for us, like, you know, everyone starts on tier 1, and then if they're struggling, they go to tier 2 and then tier 3 before, unless it's like something super obvious, you know. It's not a 2 or 3 week process. So if she had been moving around so much, maybe she was never in one place long enough for all of the steps to be completed. Then she moves somewhere else out of state, and it starts all over again.
We don't really know all of the dynamics because it's a story. But you know, when you move to a new place, they have to collect data, to support testing. There's a lot that goes into it. So
yeah, but then you also have the classic, like, just pass them along because it's easier to give them a fake A than justify why you failed. Yeah.
Well, and there was one point, I mean, obviously teachers had noticed it in the past, because at one point on page 28, even though my third grade teacher told her that I might just be slow, and that my mom shouldn't expect too much of me. My mom's eyes got all wide and shiny when she heard that, but she's never bought into what the teacher said. So like, obviously people realize, but then also like, I will say we had a little girl that I worked with last year, and she struggled so much, but she was also ESOL. So there's that, how much of it is language. And then finally they're like, okay, you know, she's been in it. It's not language, you know, or it's not English, you know, comprehension type thing. And she went through the testing, and she was one of those kids who fell in between. She was too high of an IQ to be considered mildly intellectually disabled, but too low of an IQ for her to be considered learning disabled.
It was in that gray area.
Right. So like, okay, so she just doesn't get, like, it's like, wait, so obviously something needs to happen.
Yeah.
But it's like, we can't put her in a mildly intellectually disabled class. She's 2 IQ points above. It's like,
if only she missed one more question.
It's like, can you do it again and tell her to not try so hard or something? I mean, but it's frustrating because she literally fell in this no man's land.
And at that point,
she didn't qualify for anything.
It's not only frustrating for the student, but it can also become frustrating for the teacher.
Yeah. And then like, she's not gonna test out of ESL because the test to pass out of ESL is reading comprehension.
Don't you love it?
So it's like she's getting pulled for ESL, which is taking her away from classroom material instruction time, which she really needs.
Right.
So it's like she's just losing all around.
Yeah. It was so frustrating.
Yeah. Well.
One of the things that I found interesting was how Allie referred to reading like a bowl of alphabet soup splattered on a plate. So like, in my mind, I was really picturing alphabet soup spread out.
In the sketchbook of impossible things. I always thought dyslexia was you read things backwards. I didn't know that it's a lot more complex than that. Yeah, because again, my students don't do a lot of print reading, so I don't deal with dyslexia. So what do you guys know? Like, what are your expertise in that matter? Like, is it like what Allie says, is they get to wiggling around on the paper?
So it's interesting because I'm doing the dyslexia endorsement right now. And it's kind of seems like it's different for different kids, you know?
Yeah, I think like what you said, that was Allie's experience, but another child could still be considered dyslexic, but I guess have a different set of challenges.
Okay.
Yeah, and like some of the other things, and they did talk about this a little bit, but like some of the other things that are like often tells that it's dyslexia is like poor spelling, poor grammar, you know, poor handwriting.
Even like, I don't think they hear individual sounds, because in the story,
they mentioned that in the story,
when she was working on reading a word, I think
cat.
Mr. Daniels had written the word cat down, and when she hears the word cat, she just hears cat, and he was trying to explain to her that cat has 3 sounds and how to break the word down into sound.
Well, and it's interesting because this book was written in 2015, and so, I mean, a lot of people were still using the cueing systems then, and they weren't teaching phonics and phonemic awareness.
Yeah.
So, was she just never taught to hear the sounds, because a lot of kids don't hear this. I mean, that is a taught skill, right? So
it is a taught skill. But even when I reflect, sometimes when I'm teaching phonics, it's like, how do I know this? You don't, sometimes you don't know how you know stuff, like you just know. And I guess that's where that systematic instruction comes in the classroom, teaching to make, but also making sure your children know why this is the way that it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was taught to read in the whole language era, you know, which just expose kids to literature and they'll learn to read. Now, I had a first grade teacher who did not do that. I mean, of course, she exposed us to great literature, but we did sight word for, you know, high frequency and words that don't follow rules. And then we did phonics and sounding things out. So I was lucky that I had a teacher who did not just throw books at me and just, you know, assume I was going to catch on. Right. But I mean, so many kids who grew up when I did, that was their reading experiences. Just memorize a bunch of words and then eventually you'll
learn how to read.
And for some kids, you will, like, right? I mean, they always say that there's like this amount of kids who, no matter what kind of instruction you give them, they'll eventually pick it up, right? But then there's the rest of the kids who need more specific, you know, like explicit and systematic. And then there are some kids who need an even higher level. So yeah, when I read that, I was like, was she never taught it, or does she really not hear it? You know?
Yeah.
And then that goes back to her being going to 7 different schools within 7 years.
Yeah. My mom always joked she was an Army brat and she went to 16 different schools in 12 years.
Wow.
And she always jokes she got Virginia state history, California state history, you know, she got all the state histories, but she never got US history in all the years because she moved to a different state and it wasn't, you know, that wasn't the right year for it. She never got US history. She knows a bunch of state history though.
Nice. Back to your earlier point about linguistics and decoding and things like that. I had an aha moment like that when I was doing the state's making us do these stupid tests. The QRI, it's a literacy test. You know, basically read the words on the page kind of thing. And it starts off of obviously real easy, like cat, hat, blah blah blah. But then you get up into the high school levels, and it does require decoding. And a lot of my students are not getting up there, but then you've got this kid, I'm sitting here looking at it, and what was one, like the word evaporate, like I saw him like evaporate, you know. It's and it made me kind of think like I don't have a lot of kids that do that, you know. They don't have. And so when I try to teach phonics, like it doesn't come up all the time because I'm high school, but these kids need phonics. And we'll be talking about cat has 3 sounds, you know, and I'll tell them what sound does, I don't know, the T make, and they're like tuh. I'm like, no, that's 2 sounds, tuh. It's that's it. Yeah,
and like when he writes impossible and then he breaks it into syllables, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when he said.
Yeah. But like when I first started teaching, when I was in undergrad, it was queuing systems and it was reading and writing workshop, you know.
And
it was not teach phonics.
It hasn't been that long ago when we were teaching the queuing, when we were doing queuing systems in the classroom, units of study. What did you do? That was not that long ago.
No.
So those students who will be soon coming to high school, that's going to be the instruction that they received.
Yeah. And it's interesting that like if you listen to the podcast Told the Story, I mean, like our school got rid of it a long time ago because I have a 9th grader and he learned phonics, you know. But other schools in other areas continued doing full-on cueing systems, very little phonics until, 2020, 2021, 2022,
Yep.
So, yeah, but you were talking about how Ali said the words felt like alphabet soup, but I liked at one point, well, first of all, there's the quote, and I think I mentioned it during another one because it came up in one of my articles from my trends class. And it was Mr. Daniel says, I believe the things we put numbers aren't necessarily the things that count the most. You can't measure the stuff that makes us human.
Yeah.
And then at one point, Ali says, she says, people act like the word slow reader tell them everything that's inside. Like I'm a can of soup and they can just read the list of ingredients and know everything about me. But there's stuff about the soup inside that they can't put on the label, like how it smells and tastes and how it makes you feel warm when you eat it. There's got to be more to me than just a kid who can't read well.
Yeah.
And I feel like I really try in my class because all kids have strengths and all kids have weakness. Even your best kid has weaknesses and even your lowest kid has strengths. And it's our job to see the whole student, right?
Yeah.
And Mr. Daniels found Allie's strengths and then played up on them.
I just loved him as a teacher because he's like a teacher's teacher. Although he was a sub, he really stepped in to help his students. He knew Allie's struggles and he was willing to, work with her. And although he wasn't a teacher because he was still in school, he still took on that task.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes sometimes it's the newer teachers or the teachers who are
bright-eyed, bushy-tailed.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He was getting his degree in special ed. So this was the stuff he was currently learning and wanting to try out. So it worked out great that here he has a student who he's able to make a connection with. And then,
and it was like you said, it was because she went through several classrooms up to 6th grade. No one has thought, hey, something's wrong
going on.
Yeah. And then he picked up on it. But like you said, he was a student. So he's getting all this information. And he's like, I think I know what's going on. Let me talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
It was kind of unfortunate that no one else said, got to her before 6th grade.
Yeah.
Mr. Daniels got to her.
Yeah. That was interesting. On page 167, he's saying these are the things we're going to do. We're going to practice writing the letters with shaving cream, and you'll use sight and touch and write large enough to use your whole word. And I was like, that's Orton Gillingham. That's what he's using, right? Or if not Orton Gillingham, the ideas from Orton Gillingham. I was just like, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be it's always been the gold star kind of, or what they say is the best way for kids who have dyslexia to learn to read.
Is that so?
Huh?
I was just saying, is that so?
Well, and it's interesting because I'm wondering if it'll change now that the dyslexia laws, but our neighbor, she's dyslexic and their daughter's dyslexic, and when she went and got tested, and finally was diagnosed with dyslexia instead of just journal reading difficulties, and they were Orton Gillingham, that's how she needs to learn. And at that point, our school, all the K1 and 2 teachers were trained Orton Gillingham, but she was in 4th grade at that point. And so they actually got a waiver, like, you know, the scholarship thing, to send her to a school that would, you know, that they were all trained, all the teachers were trained. So
Nice.
so I don't know if Orton Gillingham is still, you know, but 6 years ago, that was the.
I'm gonna type that into my browser here so I can look that up later.
It's like a multi-sensory way of learning. Like you use all your senses, and you know.
Yeah.
I feel like it was very much how I taught in preschool. You know, like
Okay. Yeah.
we were always like, make your body. I mean, it was just like, you know, make your body into an A. Let's write the A. You know, just let's trace it into shaving cream. Let's, you know, write it with a bunch of different colors, you know, just engaging all the senses.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So,
yeah, we do that here with, you know, early literacy. Everything's tactile over here.
Right.
So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Definitely no paper and pencils. I wonder if dyslexia then is like, kind of like, so in my world, we have CVI, cortical visual impairment, where the leading cause of blindness is not something wrong with the eye, but the eye itself is like, it's a good eye, but the pathway and the pathway itself is also good too, but the brain cannot interpret.
Like the processing between.
Yeah. So the computerized part of vision just falls apart. And so the kid sees everything fine, but the brain doesn't register that this is a stuffed animal next to a wallpaper with a floral pattern. It's just all chaos, you know?
Huh.
And so we're just starting to find out that this is like the leading cause of blindness. It's the next trendy thing in special ed. So I wonder if like dyslexia is like kind of that equivalent in literacy. Like we're starting to realize it's bigger than it is.
Well, and it was interesting because at one point when she's talking to Travis about what she does with Mr. Daniels, and he talks about the headaches, because obviously he is also dyslexic. Like when he starts talking, like it's obvious they're experiencing the same things. Because he's like, but the headaches, you know, and she says that he puts different color.
Yeah, color overlays.
And I've never heard of that. And I wanted to look that up because that's something that I've never heard of before.
Yeah, I've got some real quick.
So y'all use that too?
Yeah, I don't this is not a good example of it, but these are tactile buttons and we put them on things like the kid's iPad, but they come in different they're translucent.
Yeah.
And so they come in different colors and such. Like my kid with CVI, he works really well with red and black. So instead of like white and black, you know, because like with Allie, you know, the white paper would hurt her. Give her headaches. And so you take a color overlay and lay it on top of the paper, and now all of a sudden it's red and black instead of white and black. And so color overlays.
Their eyes less.
Yeah, and some of the fluorescent lights over here, we get big sheets.
Yeah,
stick it over
I was about to say I have some of the covers for some of my lights too, because it's over. Yeah, that's interesting. I know I had one of my students last year. He could not stand the way pencil wrote on paper. Could not.
Yeah.
He said it felt rough and it made weird noises. Now a pen on paper did not bother him at all.
Yeah.
And like if something as simple as you can write in pen solves so many issues.
Yeah.
And occasionally, like they actually put me in his room to cover an IEP meeting. And like, I know a lot of the kids in that class because they were in one of the classes I worked with last year. And there was a sub in there and he was like, why are you using pen? I was like, he can use pen. He's
Yeah.
allowed.
No.
Don't you are going to there's going to be a meltdown.
Yeah, just chill out. Quit being a teacher.
Yes, he's doing math and pen. It's fine. We'll give him another copy of the paper if we need to. It is not like worth.
No big deal.
Yeah. So, one thing I like, so first of all, this Shay girl, come on.
Oh my gosh, she was awful.
She was awful. And the fact that like it seemed like the first teacher was not putting in her place or not paying attention or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, seriously. At one point, like Allie like tries to be nice to her, right? Like
she just right back to being mean.
Right. But
Shay was rude to everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
Jessica,
Even her friend.
Even Jessica, she was still mean to her.
Yeah.
So Shay didn't really discriminate.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
She was just mean.
But you saw it at home when the mom
and that's what I think, because when she lost
to the class president.
You see where she has learned it from. But at one point, Allie's talking like she's thinking about words and the power that they have. And how like Mr. Daniel uses them and it makes them feel better about themselves. And then how Shay uses them and it makes them feel worse, you know. And that her grandpa used to say, be careful with eggs and words because neither can ever be fixed. Yeah. And I grew up in the 80s, and the big thing was sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
And I remember being like 5 and saying to mom, that is a lie.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Like words hurt. Mm-hmm. And a cut can heal, but like the word, like if some, like the words don't go away. They don't
go away. Once they're out, they're out. And then someone can carry those words with them throughout life, because you know, I'm sure we can all remember an instance where our feelings were hurt based on what someone said. So the saying is absolutely
And then she also says, like, everyone has their own blocks weighing them down that they're dragging around. Like, I think that might have been right after Shay lost or something. I don't know what happened, but Oliver's talking about he thinks it's cool that she has dyslexia. And then like he doesn't like to read either, you know, even though he doesn't struggle with it like she does, but he's like, you have a reason to not be good at reading. I don't, I'm just not good at it. And then she says, like, I realized that her reading differences were dragging like a concrete block. We're like dragging a concrete block around every day. And I felt sorry for me, but now I realize that everyone has their own blocks to drag around and they all feel heavy.
Yeah.
So even kids who don't have disabilities, who are neurotypical, like they have other things. Like Shay has her mom who's putting all this pressure on her, you know. And Jessica has this, you know, want to be liked by Shay, you know, like everyone has something.
Everyone. It kind of led me
like Albert, he was a little bit different.
Yeah.
Albert didn't let much bother him. He always what do you call it? He was always able to see the good in everything, no matter what it was. Even when he didn't have food in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not my fault. Yeah.
Yeah, he said it's not his fault, like it wasn't his responsibility to
he's like, that's not why would it bother me? It's not my responsibility.
Right. Yeah, as a kid, it's not your responsibility. And it did not bother him.
Yeah. But it does, like it does.
It bothers him, but
he's able to hide it better, or
he can cope with it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. He actually, did y'all watch Big Bang Theory or Young Sheldon? Okay, it kind of reminds me of Sheldon Cooper. Like
I can see that. Oh yeah.
And like he's very, very bright, but like socially awkward. You know. But I will say I loved the relationship between Keisha and Albert and Allie, because so Albert's he's very smart, but he's like socially awkward, and his family's struggling with money and he's getting beat up and stuff. And then Allie's struggling with dyslexia and she thinks Keisha has everything going on. And Keisha's like, don't you notice I'm the only one with darker skin? Like, I'm also an outcast too, and they like band together and like help each other. And it kind of sounds like the first time that like Albert and Allie really had like a friend group, right?
Friend. Because even when he took them home,
to
his house, Allie said the way that his mother, when he said he brought his friends home, his mother was like, okay.
He was so excited. Yeah. And I love his t-shirt, Flint, and then
Flint,
when they wear the steel and magnesium shirts, like,
we're all
that they're gonna set the world on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how he like finally sticks up for himself when the bullies pick on his friends.
Yeah.
Like he says, my dad always says, don't use violence except for when it's like, I don't know how you say, like super important or whatever, or it really matters. And he said, I didn't realize it would be when they started picking on my friends.
Yeah. Well, you guys, that, according to my timer anyways, I had a timer set for an hour and I thought it was going to kick us off, but thank God it didn't, because I thought it was going to kick us off once the hour hit, but that was 8 minutes ago.
I always did too, because I was scared.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. I was sitting there thinking like, man, we're in the middle of something great and it's about to down.
Yeah, I was always like set it for 2 hours because I was like, you know what? I don't want to. I was afraid it would kick us off before we were actually done. It looks awful, and I have no idea what the reaction is, but hopefully it'll go away because it looks terrible.
Yeah. Well, such is life.
I know.
Yeah. Next week it'll be something else.
I know. Okay, well, it was a pleasure to work with you all this semester.
Yes, ma'am. I can't believe that the semester's almost over.
I know. So all we have is our final.
Final, yeah.
That's it. We'll be finished.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, good luck on everything, you guys.
Yeah, good luck to y'all too.
Yeah.
Good luck with your new job, Todd.
Thank you.
Oh,
yeah. Fingers crossed. That's stressful, but we'll get there.
You'll like it.
Thanks. I hope so. All righty. Well, I'll see you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.